and welcome to Chad's Ask the Expert. My name is Gabriela Navarro, and I am the Bilingual Health Information Specialist here at Chad. Today, we will be talking about the essential elements that guide therapeutic work within Latino immigrant families. I am pleased to welcome our expert, Dr. Luke Smith, board certified in child and adolescent and general psychiatry, and the executive director of El Futuro, a nonprofit behavioral health agency that offers outpatient services to the Latino population in North Carolina. He will share his expertise on how providers can better engage Latino youth with ADHD and their families to better connect, but also empower them to manage ADHD effectively while considering the barriers that are commonly faced within the Latino community.
Well, hello, I'm delighted to be with you, and I will share with you today what are essential elements. What are the things that should guide our work with Latino immigrant families as we work with them, as they're coming to us for a variety of reasons. But the one we're talking about is ADHD, though it may not always show up initially as ADHD. So I'll get into that. I'll say a little bit more about myself in a moment. But say you have somebody who comes in. I use the word patient because I'm a doctor. It may be a client, it may be a student, it may be a family member. Who knows who you're dealing with and what context and what they're referred to, but I'm going to say patient. But if you meet this person, a child, as you see in this figure here, what are some things you can say when you first meet the individual, the young person? I am going to go ahead and answer the question because this is not one where you can respond to me, but I'm going to say that you can say, what is your, if you notice that they are Spanish speaking, try your Spanish out. Do something that tries to bridge the gap between perhaps your language and that person's language. And maybe even be a little awkward about it because that's okay. That shows some humanness in the encounter. So maybe I would say buenos dias or ¿cómo estás? Something very simple that I learned in Spanish class. I think most of us have some kind of rudimentary Spanish that we've learned or heard or can learn. And that's a really endearing way to relate to somebody who speaks another language and just shows that you're making an effort and you're trying. But how do we start the interview? This is another thing that comes up because I think oftentimes a child will be brought to us because there's a problem in class or because there's something going on that's not right. And that is a way we can start. We can start with the problem, but we can also start indirectly. We can go with other ways to make a person feel less on the spot, less in trouble, because that's how oftentimes children feel when they're coming in. And parents feel that too, actually. So that's how we could start the interview. And then what our focus is important too, because it may be that we focus on the problem too quickly, or we focus on the kid and not some of the other things that are layered around the kid that is actually causing a environment or making an environment that's not supporting this kid. So how do we focus? Well, it's actually to broaden our lens. And I would like to talk a little bit more about that today. And then say we've understood that this is ADHD and that we are going to form some kind of care plan or treatment plan around this young man. What does that include? Well, I, as a child psychiatrist, have oftentimes been taught that this should include a very narrow focus of perhaps behavioral coaching for the parent and medication for the child, and maybe some school supports. But what else within this Latino patient should we be thinking about? That's important. And what's my evidence base? Well, the answer to this question is it's not a lot. Within the Latino community, we don't have a lot of research that's specifically for that community or that has research that has representative samples of the Latino community in research. And so we're working to catch up and build that evidence base. So a lot of it is an extrapolation of an evidence base that's not primarily around Latino patients and individuals. So I work at El Futuro. This is in North Carolina, established in 2004. We provide a lot of care to people every year. Here's this small team that began in 2005 with me and a couple of social workers and a licensed professional counselor. And we've grown to a staff of 70 who are from almost every Latin American nation. And we work in a context of growth, where we've seen a lot of growth happen in North Carolina over the years. We serve around 2,400 patients per year. We have several clinics. We serve more than half the counties of North Carolina. We have therapists, psychiatrists, substance use counselors, community health workers, peer support specialists, and ADHD coaches, which are very important in our work. We also have a teaching and consultation service, which I put a barcode on here that you can scan to learn more about. And this is something where we provide technical assistance, consultation around how to do a better job at a clinic level, but also a lot of training for individual providers on how to work with this community. So a lot of what I share today is coming from our real life experience over 20 years, and then also work that we've done in our training of others, and a lot of research and evaluation work that we've done to bring forth these concepts. And in our service array, we see a number of people. The primary diagnosis is one of mood disorders, but we see neurodevelopmental disorders, which are primarily an ADHD diagnosis, come in as well. But why I showed this slide is because a lot of time people will come in and their primary diagnosis is actually one of depression, trauma, anxiety, and yet there is a comorbid diagnosis of ADHD as well. And so with a child who comes in who may have a language delay, may have anxiety, may have immigration trauma or acculturation stress, that may be what we're focused on, but there may also be an ADHD diagnosis. And that's the hard thing to tease out, but what we can't miss in our work with Latino patients, that there may be something else and we need to be scanning for that. So earlier this year of the presentation, 2023, one of my colleagues came out with a research study that looked at new immigrants and what are called syndemic factors, conditions that grow up in a confluence of many different reasons that bring these together. And then you see certain conditions come up together. And what they, in her research, looked at was a result of something that's called acculturative stress. And that is when a person comes to a new community, they are acculturating, they're getting to know that community, yet it's very stressful. And her research showed that there are 4 main ways that this shows up. And that is around family, marriage, economic problems, and occupational issues. And those are where people interface with a dominant culture in a new environment, and it starts to stress their family. It starts to stress them in the workplace, in the school place as well. And this starts to create conditions on the branches of our tree. So if this is a tree representing an immigrant, what we'll see is that we'll see certain conditions start to pop up: mental illness, substance use, intimate partner violence, and risk for AD or HIV. And these start to cluster together so that we see these disproportionately represented in immigrant communities and new environments. This is key for us to understand as we're working with that little boy who just came into our clinic or our counseling room, is that this child is the product of something that's blowing on this family, and that's a acculturative stress that's creating other conditions. And so we may be scanning for these other things that are happening. It's not just ADHD. And what her research found is that there are certain things that are protective against these acculturative stresses. And if we look into the roots, we start to see what those are. We start to see strong family ties protect people from those conditions, that ethnic pride and identification with ethnic culture that the person is from is actually protective. Connection to community resources is protective and starts to reduce the load of those conditions. And I want to develop this more because I'm presenting it very quickly. And I want to do this through looking through what are some of those ways that we can do this. And ultimately, that through that, we'll provide better resilience for the immigrant, for the child who is in the classroom or who's walking into our office, to be able to overcome this condition that is popping up. And as you can see with these conditions, many of these are going to cause a child to be distracted. And so this has to be in our differential of understanding that it might be something else. It may not be ADHD. It may be that there's intimate partner violence in the home that's distracting to this child. But it also may be that we are not just doing this diagnostically, but we're also doing it from a treatment lens. And that's what I'd like to look at, because sometimes we think about treatment and we think about medication, we think about behavior coaching, we think about doing these things that address the branches of the tree, but we don't think about the root level interventions and treatments. So let's look at what some of those interventions could be to augment our treatment that will enhance our treatment specifically for the Latino community. And what would those be? Well, the root level interventions I put here are classes, seminars, and groups. And key to this are two things that I think about. So we'll do a class or we'll do a group, and we'll say, come, and we'll do pre-measures and post-measures. And then we see actually increased understanding. We see that people learn new skills. One of the things that people say is they say, wow, I learned that I'm not alone, that other people have kids with this condition. And I thought it was just us. And that's significant. The other thing is that it connects people with other people and grows those roots of interconnectedness with other families, with other people. And that's protective for that parent who's worn out, who is not understanding the system that they're involved in, and now they're connected to others, and there's solidarity that begins to develop. Another thing that we do is we provide access to videos. We make our own videos, but there's videos on the internet, and this starts to enhance the understandings. So if I have a limited amount of time with somebody to talk about what is ADHD, for instance, or here are the things that you can do, it's really helpful to see a video that amplifies and reinforces the message that I just brought to this person. Number one, I may not be doing it in the right language. I may be doing it through an interpreter. So what about showing a video that shows a person in the primary language speaking to that person? Better yet, another thing that we found, and you can see in this picture, is a conversation with a parent who we're talking with about some aspect of ADHD. So if we have that conversation with a parent, we're talking about, in this slide, the emotions of parents of children who have ADHD. So these parents are stressed out and worn out. And we talk with this parent and we say, what's it been like for you? And now by video, we can provide that much more quickly. They can watch it and then they can show it to a partner or a spouse or a mother-in-law who's watching over them all the time. And this starts to create better community support and familial support for this parent who's come into our office. We also think about self-help and bibliotherapy, books or articles or webinars that we can share with parents that, again, amplify our message. We look at community fiestas in our work as something that develops what we see on this slide, which is ethnic pride. Connecting people with their ethnic heritage is very protective. I have a recent event here where we celebrated Dia de los Muertos in our parking lot and outside of our clinic. Beautiful moment. Amazing to think that this is related to our treatment for ADHD, but it is. It's refueling people and keeping them in the game and letting them be here in a different culture, but also connected to their other culture. And this sustains people in this struggle. It causes kids who always are hearing messages at school that you're not good enough, that you're not learning like us, that your pronunciations are weird. Hey, but I can be proud of my culture. And that's important. We also have a lot of open spaces. There's a wonderful book that is called Palaces for the People, and I'd recommend you check it out in your spare time. But one of the concepts it brings up is something called not just social capital, which is meeting other people, but bridging capital, bridging to other people groups, other types of people, people who are not like me necessarily. But whatever the case is, within these settings, whether it be a school, a sports field, a public swimming pool, a park, all of these ways are ways that people can actually bridge over and have connections within a community. And again, this is a root level intervention. It may not seem so directly related to ADHD, but it is because it starts to strengthen people and allows them to have a stability that enhances our treatment outcomes. And I also want to mention another aspect of that type of work, and that is more specifically with mentoring, with youth groups, with sports, STEM projects, things that relate to education sometimes, but also just relate to other responsible adults who can mentor these kids who oftentimes may be locked into a situation, maybe in a family or in a community that doesn't have a lot of role models who are trying to do the types of things that we're asking them to do. Recently, we were able to take a group of kids, 55 people, families and kids, on a trip to NASA. Now, this is actually part of our ADHD treatment. And this was because we wanted them to have a vision for something bigger. And we saw families, you see a kid riding on the shoulders of a dad here, and mom taking a selfie of herself with her son. This is aspirational. This is hope giving and optimism giving, like the diagram says in the roots. And this is something that, again, lifts kids' eyes to something beyond what maybe they feel like they're able to accomplish. And it helps to encourage. And it's done in a way that shows, we were very impressed that at NASA, all the Latino employees came out to really embrace the kids that we took to visit because they wanted to be there. And our kids came back and said, wow, a lot of Latinos work at NASA. I think I should work at NASA someday. Wow, that was awesome. But it's also great to see them supported in a way that shows that they can do this type of awesome work that they've heard about. So all of these are root level interventions I put down here, things like Medicaid enrollment, food bank programs. It just continues to strengthen the roots and build resilience. And if we focus on the roots, that's great. We also have to focus on some other things. So let me detail what those are. And the next one that I'd like to look at is actually, how do we address systemic barriers? And what do I mean by that? Let me give a couple of examples. You want to give the child a Ritalin 10 milligram tablet. What could be some systemic barriers? Well, first, I think about what are some beliefs that a Latino parent may have about this advice that you're giving. I'd like your child to take Ritalin 10 milligram tablet. What are you talking about? Here are the top concerns. And this is almost like a Family Feud survey says, these are the top concerns. Addiction, that's first on the person's mind. Cost, how am I going to afford it? What is the documentation I need to pick it up from the pharmacy? And then what are the instructions? How do I communicate that to the parent? Everybody's worried about addiction. They're worried that once you get on it, you can't stop it, and that this is something that's toxic for my child. Worried about the cost. The last one I had here with the instructions is oftentimes we'll write a prescription in a psychiatric office or a primary care office. People go out to the pharmacy and then they get it in English on the bottle. So I really need to anticipate that and think, how can I share with this family the instructions in Spanish so that they know exactly what to do? And I'll tell them, you may get something on the bottle that says one thing and you may not understand that. Here are the instructions I am intending for your child when you get this medicine for the pharmacy. Here's the name. Maybe I write the generic and the brand name so they understand there's a difference and describe what that is. And then here's the medicine, and here is the way to take it. It's no wonder that a lot of the prescriptions that we write aren't used by the families. In our state of North Carolina, we're showing that a large percentage of those prescriptions never are filled by the families. What are some of those systemic reasons? Well, one of them is actually lack of insurance. So this Ritalin 10 milligram tablet, if I wrote this for a family, they would look and they would say, how much does it cost? And if we go to GoodRx, what happens is if I write that Ritalin 10 milligrams, if I didn't write generic's going to be a lot cheaper. So why don't I just go with a cheaper form? But also I maybe think, oh, well, this kid has something like Medicaid. And then we go to the Medicaid preferred drugs and it's not on there. Medicaid won't pay for it, but it's Ritalin. It's the most common basic thing we could give, but it's actually not covered by Medicaid. I need to know that, because if this person has insurance and it's not going to pay and they're having to pay out of pocket, it's too much. They're not going to get it. And that's a systemic issue that I need to be thinking about. Or what about picking it up for the pharmacy? I already said this. And what are the forms of ID that you need to pick up a Schedule II medication like a stimulant medicine from the pharmacy? I wonder if you know what that is. Well, if you're in our state of North Carolina and you're going to pick it up from the pharmacy, First of all, you're going to go there and you may find that you can't even understand the pharmacists. So that's an issue. And it may be that then you show your proof of ID and you pull it out and you show it to them and they say that won't work. Well, in our state, it's a government issued ID, including a military ID or a passport from your country. And so the person would have to show a passport, and then they may find that they have another type of ID from their home country, but it's not a passport, which may or may not get accepted. Or it might be systemic in a way that the pharmacist still looks at the person and says, I won't take it because of why? Discrimination. They may simply flat out not give it to the patient. And we have to think about that and advocate for our patients and watch for those instances. And I have that happen plenty of times. So there's a lot of reasons. Okay, let's talk about another systemic issue, and that is this term, malcriado. So perhaps I went to Spanish class and I learned malcriado. And what did I learn it meant in Spanish class? It means poorly behaved. And that's what I hear. And so a parent will say, my child is malcriado. Why did they say that? Because that's what their family's telling them. But when you look at this word in Spanish and you break it down, it actually means poorly raised. So the extended family is sitting around watching an ADHD kid with their family, and they're saying, that kid is malcriado. They're not just saying poorly behaved. They're saying, Mom, you didn't raise that kid right. And then what happens? The mom and dad go to the school, and they're in the school, and they go to parent-teacher conference. And what do they hear? They may not hear this word, but they may hear, well, you didn't raise your kid with English. You didn't do the right things and read enough books to your kid. And they start to hear messages of, and then what do they do in the school? Instead of giving them an IEP and extra support, they put them in school suspension. They discipline instead of support. All the messages that are coming to this child and this parent are, you've done the wrong thing. I'd like to show a video of a young lady who is talking about some of her experiences in this world as a Latino child immigrant and what this has caused her to feel growing up in a public school system. So let's watch this video.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, that's me. I'm Emily. I felt like that dog part in my introduction is really, really important. So that's why it's there. Yeah, I'm a senior. I'm currently in my library by the boards, but I did write a poem. I'm not critically acclaimed, and I don't have any awards, but I do like writing in my free time. And I made one that's called "We Are the Future, Deal with It." And I'm going to start. It's a dream for students like me to accomplish our goals for our families. The necessity to repay for those who came from far away creates the drive for success that is underway and may just sound somewhat cliche. Yet in this country they call the greatest nation, they dehumanize this generation. We saw the beginning of redaction of driver's licenses, jobs, and similar actions made purposefully to limit us distractions. The beginning of the end of the commencement of pretend that those with darker skin and other languages should be condemned for not becoming the ideal image or blend. The obstacles for undocumented creates a negative environment cemented and limits the underrepresented. The babies, the nieces, the nephews, the sisters, brothers, and children's livelihoods are refused by those who fail to understand and disapprove that all we want to do is excel and bloom. We are not monsters nor criminals, neither aliens or prisoners. We are the future petitioners, the future lawyers, engineers, journalists, medical practitioners. We are the future lawmakers and musicians, the teachers, electricians, politicians. We are the ones who will solve this mission. And plus, who are you to say that we are the problem of this nation? But without immigrants, we would waste away, as we are the workers, leaders, and population. All we ask is for the proper treatment of immigrants. We don't need to be belittled or stopped. We need to be supported at any cost. Do it for the children, the future generations, so they themselves won't face these limitations. Listen to us when we say, we are the future and we're here to stay.
So Emily's voice pierces us and reminds us of the experience that people who are suffering from systemic level types of pressures and oppressions are feeling. Here she grows up in a public school system and she's feeling all of this pressure of people saying, no, you can't, no, you can't, no, you can't. And she's very courageously saying, yes, we can. But what she's found in her life is language barriers, that all of the things you see on this slide are causing her and her community to feel very underrepresented, not advocated for, and not heard in key moments of health. And the more we can think about that, whether that be the right type of prescription or being careful with our language so that it doesn't dehumanize people or inappropriately label them as poorly raised, to consider their healthcare insurance access, all the energy that's needed to come in to get help for their children. This helps us to understand what are potential barriers that are causing people to very much underuse the services and never get treatment or never use the treatment that we think we're offering that's so wonderful. And so if we think about the roots as one area and we think about systemic barriers as another, the final thing is offering the clinical care, the clinical care or the value-based care. And I want to say value-based because we can do what we think are the right things, but if we don't do what we think is needed and what is needed in the right way, we're going to miss the boat. So I'd like to offer several different values that are important when we work with Latino community. And so let's number them. The first one is that of confianza or trust. I learned the word confianza in Spanish school, and I was like, oh, trust. What does that mean? Well, I learned what it meant. When I work with a community who values the relationship and comes because they hear somebody else got help from us, and they're listening and watching. Can I trust you? And how do I engender trust? Well, it's like I said at the very beginning, it's buenos dias, using a little bit of language sometime, showing that I'm listening instead of just assuming certain things. That starts to build significant trust. Working within a trusting organization, making sure my organization is also reinforcing that trust. Another value is that of human warmth, or as we say in Spanish, calor humano. When I first started working as a psychiatrist with the Latino community over 20 years ago, my receptionist in our little bitty office came in and she closed the door behind her and she said that the new doctor who was training with us, who was Cuban, she said, I don't think she can work with us. She doesn't have calor humano. And I thought to myself, the direct translation of that was warm human. Does she have a fever? What does she have? And she was like, no, she's teaching me Spanish at that point. She's like, she doesn't have human warmth. She just walked through the waiting room. She didn't say hi to anybody. She didn't say hola, buenos dias. She didn't say con permiso. She didn't use, this lady spoke perfect Spanish. And yet she was very cold with the community. And the community saw this and they didn't want to trust her. She didn't have human warmth. Another value that we need is that of respect or respeto. Or how do we respect every single person to understand that maybe I understand a lot of things about Latino culture, but everybody is different. And this person in front of me, I need to meet them where they are and not ask for them to come to me. And that's a central tenet of equity, is that we don't treat everything as the same, that we look at the differences and nuances and go and meet people where they're at. The final value that I'll put forward is that of humility, humildad, cultural humility. In the Latino community, what's very significant is a classism that oftentimes begins to develop with education, with color of skin, with money and wealth, with immigration status. And there's a lot of who's in, who's not in this class system. And so we as providers of care, those who are trying to help, oftentimes are seen very quickly as, are you looking down on me? Are you with me or are you above me? How am I going to feel? Because I'm tired of this classist system that I've been a part of, and I don't want it anymore. And actually, if you talk to me like that, I just would rather go away. And so if I'm not using these cultural values, no matter what I'm doing and what I'm offering, is not going to be effective because it's not hitting the mark, and people are going to feel it and they're going to walk away. So this is another small video that I want to show here towards the end of our presentation that's of our clinic and something that we do, which is how we say hi to people.
Hi, buenos días, welcome. Buenos días. Buenos días. Buenos días. Hola.
Okay, so now you have two words, buenos dias and hola, at least to say hello to people when they walk in. How about our waiting room, where people come into? What could we do to enliven this environment that looks so cold and so sterile? What could we do? I asked an audience this recently, and they said, well, you could put some plants in there. Yeah, put some plants in there. What about art that's representative of diversity in the community that we're serving? What about literature out here that's in the right language? Little info sheets that people can read and pick up and share with other people. These are ways that we can personalize, bring in calor humano or human warmth into an environment that oftentimes is cold and scary, and people feel alienated when they walk in. So these are simple ways that we can go about engaging people. And I oftentimes say, look at me, I'm a white man who's doing psychiatry for a Latino community. And when they get to my office in our clinic, they've already gone through several different buenos diases, a nice culturally warm environment, and they come into my office and they already feel more relaxed. And so I don't have to do all of that work to engage them in that way, because they're already starting to feel comfortable and feeling trustful and more at home in the environment that we're in. And then I go forward and I start to do things that show some of my humility and trying to say, how are you? And I want to ask, where are you from? And tell me more about that, and listen to them, not just what's your problem? Why are you here today? Which is what a lot of times we do, unfortunately. This is the schema that I've presented today, the essential elements of working with the community. We like to think about this categorically, but one of the things that's impressive to me is that providing value-based care, addressing those systemic barriers, and focusing on roots with other interventions that really are augmenting what I'm trying to do in an individual sense, this takes a lot of work. One of the bigger systemic barriers is that we're not paid enough to do this kind of work, right? And so we're really needing to think about how can we do all of this within the interaction. It may not be on the first interaction that we're able to get all of this accomplished, and that's okay. We may need to slow it down and unroll this over time. But if we're only doing a piece of this, we're going to miss the bigger, fuller treatment effect and supportive effect that we can have with the Latino community. And that's tragic, because we're not going to be able to help kids and their families get from where they're at to where they want to go. And that's what we're all about. So I'll leave this with us today, and look forward to hearing your reflections on this, and hope that this is helpful in the work that you're doing.